Hello, everyone. This week we are presenting the case study about project management for the Hallmark Group. My name is Sadie.
My name is Kirby.
My name is Chloe.
I'm Andrew.
All right, and we will begin. So the first thing that we're going to go over is the wait, does it say record? Oh, does it say recording?
Yeah, it's recording.
Sorry, I just wanted to make sure. I was really scared it wasn't. Okay.
We can edit it, right?
Yeah, I think so. Okay, so the first thing we're going to be going over is the situation overview and summary. So Hallmark Group is a company that helps other entities on projects focusing primarily on buying and retrofitting buildings. The Hallmark Group goes through a very thorough cost-benefit analysis before choosing a project. Once a project has been picked, a project manager is selected, then the team is selected with the knowledge of what the objectives, goals, budget, and timeline for the project is. After careful analysis, Hallmark Group has taken on a project that involves a historical building that is 34 floors. This building has a chance for many opportunities in downtown Chicago for commercial and residential uses. There are a lot of many projects that must be done before the building can be considered completed. Once the budget and timeline are elaborated on, then the mini projects can be formed. Hallmark Group likes to have smaller projects so the big project seems less scary and easy to conquer. Since there are so many little projects, Hallmark Group must decide which small project to take on first, also / if at all. So furthermore into this project, we will discuss the order of the projects.
So the Hallmark Group is in the business of retrofitting buildings and homes. So retrofitting is a reconstruction method that adds new features and new technologies to existing buildings. The main purpose of retrofitting a home or a building is to help prevent the possibility of flood, wind, earthquake, or hazardous damage from occurring. Another reason for retrofitting is to build more energy efficient homes. So for example, an older home with poor or no insulation requires higher level of heating and air conditioning, which use a lot of energy if they aren't properly sealed. Additionally, residential and commercial use buildings account for about 39% of the total energy consumed in the United States. Further, the United Nations just recently put out a report that states 65% of projected building stock expected to be built globally by 2060 has already been built, which essentially means that the majority of the buildings that are expected to be built globally have already been constructed. So that means that construction that's going to be done in the next 40 years is mostly going to be retrofitting existing buildings. Companies like the Hallmark Group that center around investing in green construction are on the rise worldwide. Both governments and citizens are becoming increasingly aware and concerned about climate change and are making changes to their lifestyles and their legislatures to make a real difference. The global market share of green construction is currently projected to be around $610 billion by the year 2027, which shows that green construction is on the rise globally.
So the Hallmark Group faces a couple problems within this case, and our group indicated that the primary issue for the Hallmark Group would be completing a project on time. So in the case, it states that in the past, Hallmark Group has run into the issue of and constant struggling with delivering the project on time, on budget, or per the specification of the project. So when deciding which projects to take on, it is important for the Hallmark Group to consider which projects are likely to be completed on time, following the specifications and keeping within the budget. It is also important to choose a project that has the opportunity to be reduced in total time. Every investor wants to reduce the amount of time it takes to complete the project. And therefore, in order for Hallmark Group to appeal to their investors, they must be picky when choosing which projects they should undertake. This will also be important when we talk about crashing later on and considering which activities to crash within the project. Going on to the secondary issues, we noted that one of the secondary issues that they face is potentially not being sustainable during project completion, and the next one being not preserving the original architecture or history of a building. During the case, it mentions that the president of Hallmark, Gene McMillan, believes strongly in environmental and social sustainability. Knowing this, the project manager might want to look at factors such as reduced costs of energy when choosing which project to select. It is also important to understand that most of these buildings that Hallmark are going to invest in are historical landmarks. And that being said, they're going to be outdated, inefficient, and will have limited useful life remaining. This will be important to consider, especially as a project manager when you are planning the project.
As Chloe just mentioned, the Hallmark Group puts a huge emphasis on being sustainable and investing in socially responsible projects. So when Hallmark Group retrofits, it is so they can create more energy efficient buildings. When doing our weighted utility tables, we decided to have the reduced energy as weighted as zero point 0.6 and NPV at zero point 0.3 because Hallmark Group knows that a high NPV would attract more investors. So for risk, we put a weight at zero point 0.1 because Hallmark Group does not put a huge emphasis on risk being as being important. It is important to note that the reduced energy cost was weighted higher than other factors due to Hallmark Group's endeavors to promote sustainability and to reduce its carbon footprint.
So in doing this project, we followed the 6 steps that PERT and CPM follow. The first step is to define the project and prepare the work breakdown structure. So we decided on 4 projects to take on, 1, 2, 3, and 5. So then the next step we took was to develop the relationships between the activities. We used table 2 to calculate the expected times for each activity, which is then used to complete the flowchart of activities to be completed in sequential order. A diagram of these activities can be found in the presentation. So while filling out the steps that must proceed and which have to follow, we drew the lines that connect the activities, and we also computed the time estimate for each activity.
So yes, we then found the critical path, as we can see on the next slide. Um, it is the longest time it would take to complete the project. So we used the framework of PERT and CPM to help us plan and control the project. So the project for Hallmark Group follows a critical path from A through K. It follows this path as activities incur the longest completion times required for the Chicago project. The critical path here is depicted with the bolded red line. Um, that way you can follow through the completion time to be 43 weeks, just shy of 44 weeks, which we also recommend to be a couple of these activities to be crashed to reduce that time.
So we have kind of already touched on what the solver has been saying in terms of which projects to take on. However, we did want to list some possible options for the Hallmark Group. Option 1, based off of the solver function in Excel, shows that we should choose option 1, 2, 3, and 5 when putting a heavier weight on and wanting to maximize the energy cost reductions. Going on to option 2, we could just choose projects 1 and 5 in order to solely maximize net present value. In Solver, when we went and maximized just net present value, it suggested actually doing 1, 5, and 7. However, we have outlined here in the second option that if we choose only 1 and 5, that will also hit the aspect of the energy cost reductions. And then lastly, we were thinking of the third option to be for the Hallmark Group to simply just decline taking on any of the projects at all and simply hold on to their budget of 15 million and wait for a better opportunity to come around. And with all these options, there are pros and cons that will be later on discussed in this video.
So our group's recommendation is that the Hallmark Group should take on projects 1, 2, 3, and 5, as these projects would maximize the energy cost reductions and improve the sustainability of the building, which is a major priority for the Hallmark Group. By investing in these projects, investors in Hallmark Group would be able to follow their project budget and see a high return on their investments. We also recommend that Hallmark Group should crash activities C, H, and J, as these would expedite the project completion timeline by 3 weeks for only a slightly higher cost of completion. The project would still be within the budget constraints, as crashing these three activities would only incur an extra cost of $30,833, as you can see here on this Excel sheet. We believe that this would be a better investment for the company, as it would help decrease the time of completion, ease the critical path, and allow for Hallmark Group to focus on presenting a beautiful, sustainable, and appealing commercial and residential space for its investors. And based on our findings, there is a z-score probability of 17.36% for completing the project 3 weeks ahead of schedule due to crashing the activities mentioned previously.
So our implementation plan for the Hallmark Group in taking on projects 1, 2, 3, and 5 is fairly simple. When investing in each project, we suggest that the Hallmark Group should only have 2 active investment projects occurring at one time to ensure that they won't run behind schedule and that the Hallmark Group will have enough time resources to stay on top of the budgets for each project. Some possible concerns that we have about our selected plan is that we've chosen to lean more towards reducing the cost of energy rather than maximizing NPV. And by leaning this way, we're not maximizing the amount of present value that we can receive from the projects, but we are able to better align with the Hallmark Group's mission of sustainability. Another issue that may arise from our proposed plan is the expense from crashing. Crashing activities on a project can become costly if you don't know which activities are best to crash or if you crash too many. To combat this issue, we've only decided to crash 3 activities at a lower cost expense, and we're going to ensure that the Hallmark Group can stay on top of their budget by doing that. Regardless of those 2 issues, we believe that if they select projects 1, 2, 3, and 5, the Hallmark Group will be able to stay on schedule, under budget, and achieve their sustainability and preservation goals. Thank you for your time.